LSU football, the whole deal, and is now rocking and rolling on LSU baseball along with spring practice as well. One John Eads from WAFB 9. John, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me in, man. This is awesome. It's nice to see the setup after watching it.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming in this morning. It was nice to get to hang out with you at Pro Day the other day. We haven't been able to get out to practice, spring practice because of the time, and we've been sending the little one out there. And you've had a front row seat, get to be out there, every day. What has been your grand takeaway from spring practices before we get into some baseball stuff?
Love the energy. I feel like every time I'm out there, you can hear the guys at the beginning of practice, set the tone, let's go. So it's nice to see that because it's not like this team is a bunch of Louisiana kids that have been on this team for a couple of years. I mean, you got new guys in there that are coming in and leading the charge. They spent a lot of money to be a championship team this year, and it's nice to see the work ethic and the buy-in collectively early, like right now. And you probably, when you go to practice every year, you hear guys saying some of these things, trying to get the energy up and things like that. But it's different now. This isn't the same college football. This isn't the same LSU with guys that are here in red shirt and put in a couple years. It's, going to be a lot of new names and faces, but it seems like they're meshing and gelling early and building those relationships. And love the coaching staff. A lot of youth in the coaching staff when you think about Joe Sloan and Kyle Williams and Blake Baker and Corey Raymond and so on and so forth. And it's almost like they're extensions of the team. They're players. They're out there. They're just not wearing pads, When you watch Kyle Williams, the energy he brings to the drills. Blake Baker's out there in cleats. Yeah. He had rotator cuff surgery, so he can't push the guys around anymore, he told us. But I just love the team. I love what they're doing. And, Brian Kelly's been around for a long time, so he can't necessarily be hands-on with everything everywhere. I like the adversaries, if you will, that he's brought in to lead the different position groups and take care of their business around the field.
Has there been a specific one of those assistants that's kind of caught your eye more than anybody? I think everybody obviously will kind of, turn their attention to Kyle Williams because he's the new face in the building. But is there one, like I remember visibly last season in fall camp, Bo Davis and Kevin Peoples to me were guys that my attention just shifted to because they were loud, in your face, like old school ball coaches. Who on this staff right now has caught your eye more than anyone else?
I love them all. It's hard to focus on one because I didn't even mention Cortez Hankton, and Frank Wilson, and there's
Corey Raymond.
Yes, the tight ends coach.
Atkins.
Alex Atkins. He's not very vocal, but he's very into what he's doing, kind of like a silent assassin. If you will. He's over there with Trey Dez, like, hey, you're going to do this and do that. And then, we're going to see the results loudly between him and Bauer Sharp and Donovan Green in the fall. But probably the guy that draws your attention, I think Brad Davis. Yeah. And maybe just because he's the closest to us, like the offensive line is like, Christian knows, they're like right there. That's, if you're going to get film, that's probably the best film to get is because they're just a couple feet away from you. But he's very loud. He's very vocal. He's very in your face. But I think it's good. Like, he does it in a loving, coaching way. It's not to denigrate you or bring you down kind of way. He's getting the best out of his players, I think. I mean, you see the jumps that Tyree Adams and Weston Davis have already made. They played really well in the bowl game. That whole group did. And now they're taking ownership of their responsibility, which is to replace Will Campbell and to replace Emory Jones Jr. and Miles Frazier and Garrett Dellinger, but also be themselves and represent the standard of what it means to play offensive line at LSU. So he's probably the one that stuck out the most, but Kevin Peoples is loud and proud, I would say. And Kyle Williams, you see it on the videos you watch. There's just a certain expectation, and Blake Baker talked about this yesterday. You got to have a specific personality and coach a specific way to coach for this team, to coach for the defense, to coach for the offense. So there's a charisma and there's a swagger that all the coaches have. I think it's leaking into the players, and you hope that shows up on the field in the fall.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of new faces on this team. Like you said, they went out, they got guys to come in to be a national championship contender, to make that run at the college football playoff. These transfers that have come in, names like Sadir Mitchell have continually been brought up. Bauer Sharp is a guy that's been brought up. What have you seen from these new faces that have been added to this roster?
It's kind of like NFL free agency. They spent 7 figures maybe in some cases, possibly 6 in others, to bring a championship back to Baton Rouge for the first time in 5 years, 6 years now, I guess. It's been too long. It's been too long, I'm sure fans are saying. So they brought these guys in to be immediate impact players. Blake said that yesterday too. Not depth guys, not, all right, we need to backfill here, second string corner, second string linebacker, second string right guard. We need starters, guys that will produce for us, that have produced already in college football, and they're all doing a great job. I think they're all contending, at least in the two deep right now, and competing for starting reps. But with that said, and this is the great thing about it, the guys that have come back that they, so to speak, brought in to take their spot, take their snaps, they're like, oh, I'm not going to give up my posts easy, if at all. So DJ Chester, who played center last year, had some good moments, had some not so good moments. I think he's taken a big jump. You know, I think when you bring in that competition, it's kind of cliche and you hear it all the time, competition breeds success, or iron sharpens iron, whatever it is. But that's truly been the case with this team, because you have players who have already put in the blood, sweat, and tears in the purple and gold that want to go out and play, in front of the fans on Saturday, want to represent the colors in these games, and they don't want to give up their jobs. They don't want to give up their gigs to guys that they paid money to come in and take their spot. But with that said, the guys that are transferring in have been there and done that in most cases. They've played that big-time college football in front of these thousands of fans. They've caught the interceptions. They've produced the pancake blocks. They've scored the touchdowns. So, you know, it's a good mix. And I think this team's going to have crazy depth at a lot of different positions, not just because of that, but when you think about the injuries. You know, obviously it was a bummer to see Witt go down and Harold go down with the injury he had, but this is something I asked Blake yesterday, is how good is that for guys like Devon Keys and West Weeks and C.J. Ross and Ty Singleton? Like, how good is that for that room, that those guys now, instead of getting 5 reps, they get 30 reps? Right. Then obviously Witt and Perk are going to come back in and take their posts, but those guys have gotten extra development in the spring here, and they'll get some in the fall as well. So I think at most positions on this team, you're going to have a lot of guys you feel good about putting in the game, and it's going to open you up to creativity on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's just such a far cry from where Brian Kelly started with this roster, and then you saw him dabble in the portal when he brought in transfers that were able to come in and play right away. Then they kind of took a step back, focused on the recruiting aspect, and then it became the whole transfer portal game changed. It essentially almost overnight. We were talking about it before the show with the Underwood thing, and it became, oh, if this is how it's going to be, then we're going to start playing that way too. And it almost took like that to happen for LSU to be able to be competitive in the NIL transfer portal space. And then you see them swing massive swings and bring in, like you said, like guys that are going to compete and start. Yeah. And it's just such a far cry from whatever you're looking on the roster going, I guess, no shade to Greg Clayton, one of my favorite players ever to put on the purple and gold, but like, go get Jarvis Landry's cousin to catch punts for you. Now you're going to get Berrien Brown for $1 million.
There's a difference. And that's kind of what they've been hoping to do, is bridge the gap between their high school recruiting, because they've done a good job. Right. And class retention, they've done pretty well too. I mean, there's guys that have left because of playing time or whatever it is, but Blake said this. I keep saying Blake said this, Blake said that. I mean, Blake did not miss yesterday. Right. His press conference, every second, every answer was, I was like, wow, this is great stuff. I feel like I'm going to annoy people with how much I'm sharing, but this is all great content. Just the way that they're bridging the gap between those high school recruits and the transfer guys. I think this year it's going to be a great marriage between those two, because those guys that you've recruited 2023, 2024, even 25 have gotten some time under their belt. They've gotten some snaps. Some of the guys were at bowl practice. But you've also got these transfers, and those two together are going to create that depth and create that team. And I don't know if you're really going to have a position of weakness this year. Obviously, we have questions coming in, like the secondary's been suspect the past couple of years. You paid a couple $1 million to bring in some corners and safeties to hopefully help that. Maybe some people are believe it till you see it kind of thing. But just with the guys that they have, the snaps they put in last year, and the money they paid for guys that have produced at other places, I'm thinking about linebacker and secondary and D-line and offensive line, and I'm like, you see it in practice, these guys look good. Yeah.
Well, obviously, the pressure is on going into this next season. When you're talking about Brian Kelly's time at LSU, this is year 4 after having his worst season in year 3.
Judge me on year 3.
Right. And he went out in the portal, made those moves, brought in a good recruiting class, like you said. What is the expectation for this season? Obviously, college football playoff is the mindset. Yeah. Is that the expectation, to be one of those top 12 teams come December?
I think it has to be, because there's been a change in what they're saying, but also what they're doing. You know, it'd be one thing if they continue to say, we want to be a national championship team, we want to be a college football playoff team. But their actions have backed that up based on what they did in the portal and the aggression they seem to be attacking everything with. Like, you can feel that sense of urgency. You know, the Bo Davis situation was a bummer, losing him at this point. At least you're not Stanford firing your head coach.
Right.
Andrew Luck put out a letter.
Crazy.
That was wild.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's like, as my first act, what is even
the general manager?
Yeah, he's the general manager. Like, I'm firing the coach. Like, oh God, you have that much pull? Yeah, LSU loses the defensive line defensive line coach, and you're
it was almost
look
worse.
Around. Yeah.
It was like the sky was falling, which, you know, that's an important position, obviously, and they've struggled there some. And Bo's great. I mean, you don't want to lose a guy like that,
right?
If you don't have to. But my point is, you know, they filled that position quickly, and they filled it with a guy they like, as Blake talked about again in his press conference. So I think college football playoff is definitely the bare minimum expectation. They've been close to that before. I mean, everything kind of hinges on that Clemson game. You know, you win that, you put yourself ahead of the 8 ball, you got a notch in your belt. That's a resume-type win. If you lose, though, and you guys, I don't need to tell you about the season opener thing, I guess we'll call it with the team.
Seems
and with
to
the
be
fans.
a trend.
Yeah.
Yes, it's quite a trend.
But while you're talking about Clemson, where are you at on the idea of scheduling a game like that week 1? Like, obviously, with the lack of success LSU's had in these week 1 Power 4 matchups, a lot of the fan base is of the mindset of, can we stop scheduling?
Get out of
it. Let's play, you know, like 2019, they played Georgia Southern week 1.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the fan base wants to get back to that. Where are you at when you're looking at LSU of is that something they need to change or play those big-time matchups? See what happens.
I don't think they need to, because the conference they play in obviously is tough enough.
Right.
You know, and that's why, like, baseball does a lot of those pre-conference series against, no disrespect, you know, North Alabama and Omaha, because, you know, you don't necessarily need to put yourself out of contention if you don't need to. Like, the SEC's tough enough. Every week you're going to get resume-boosting wins. So from that perspective, I don't necessarily think they need to make the playoff. And now that it's 12 teams, even if you have a weak resume, you go 10-2 and you're LSU.
Right.
That's it. In this situation, though, I think they scheduled this years ahead of time. Like, that's how football scheduling works.
Right.
Like, you go, there's websites specifically where you can go and look at the 2030 schedule and the 2029 schedule, and these things are scheduled like that, you know, a couple of years ahead of time, like I said. So I think when they scheduled this game, it was probably still the 14 playoff.
Right.
I have to assume, because when that was the thing, you did have to schedule these games, because just competing well in conference was not good enough. You had to have a good non-conference win or two to boost your resume if you lost a game. Now, if you lost 2 games, did a 2-loss team ever make the playoff, the 14 playoff? I don't think one.
If they did, it was very rare, but nothing comes to mind.
Well, in that, what I'm saying is that
hell, an undefeated team didn't make it.
Yes, yes, and several really good 1-loss teams as well. If you got that second loss, you were basically out of it. So you wanted to preserve that as long as you could. So, you know, when you lose to a team like Florida State, it keeps you out of the playoff, like it did with LSU, with Jaden Daniels that 1 year. And so I think at that point in time, the gain was more than the loss to schedule these big games. Because if you won, like, that was huge for you. Once you get into November and they start coming out with the rankings, and then when they're making decisions, obviously that didn't ever come into play because LSU would, you know, lose to Ole Miss in late September there, and so on and so forth, Tennessee. But now I don't really think it's that pertinent that you schedule these tough games.
Right.
No, it's just, they're just already on the schedule, and it would take, no, you're a coward if you try to get out of it where you
That's
sub.
the thing. The PR would not be good if like, after they lost to who did they lose to in the opener last year? USC, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm so locked in on baseball.
Me
right
too.
now.
Oh, yeah.
I can't even really think about football that much.
And that's what we're getting to now.
After they lost that, imagine if they said, "Oh, we're pulling out of Clemson." You know, like people, like other teams.
PR
did that. Nebraska did that. I think people were throwing a fit and stuff. So, do this one. I think they can go in there and win. Honestly, like I think it's possible. The guys they have. You know, Clemson was in the playoff last year. Obviously, that coaching staff has been there a long time. They have a lot of good returning players, but I think they have what it takes to go in and win. It's just a matter of getting over the mental hurdle, I think, for them and for fans of, man, we just can't win these season opening games.
Yeah, these transfers are going to learn quick what the LSU fan base is like.
Oh,
they're like, damn,